Hello and welcome to the Team Draft Super League. I'm Steve Rubin, joined here by Sam Black. What's up, Sam? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Not bad so far. I guess we're going to go ahead and see Mike Sigrist and his green-black slowish deck play against Matt Severa's red-white Swarm in a Catcher's Name deck. What do you think is going to happen in this matchup, Sam?
I was just looking over the deck lists, and let's see. Siggy has like a decent curve. He has some good defensive creatures, some ramp stuff. Yeah, he has like enough 2-drops to be able to not get run over by red-white. His like Baleful Amit's going to be pretty important. He's made some pretty good decisions for this kind of matchup, like main decking Festering Mummy.
Yeah, we knew that you guys had a lot of the white cards, and we ended up main decking our like Stinging Shots and Festering Mummies, and I think we all have Festering Mummies.
Team Just Guy.
Yeah, it was Siggy. You know, Siggy's got a good curve, but a lot of his 2-drops Bitterblade Warriors. I mean, I guess they line up okay against what Matt's trying to do, but you know, he's trying to be a little bit aggressive himself, so we'll see him try to sit back and not get kind of combo killed by Matt. And it was interesting not having the deck list in Game 1 against Matt, because I figured just based on the creatures I saw he'd have in a Catcher's Name, but I wasn't sure if he would be playing Fling and whatnot, and I played like too conservatively almost, because I wasn't sure what tricks he had.
Yeah.
But now looking at his deck list, he's really just pretty light on spells and trying to just jam with 18 cheap creatures and get ahead and attack Siggy.
Yeah, he's really pushing the like go wide thing with the 2 Top-Crop Elite, 2 Inner Catcher's Name, and Throne of the God Pharaoh. So he was just trying to...
Yeah, I think you guys did a really good job of drafting these go underneath decks, because I keep seeing the Top-Crop Elite, which is a card that I like a lot, but I don't take like nearly as highly as a lot of the other white cards or removal spells, and then we ended up with none of them this draft, and you guys have some... I guess, wait, do you have an Elite in your deck, or?
I think I ended up with one. I know there is one that I passed for like a cheaper
Oh, right.
card.
You have the Aven Win Guides. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I have 1 Elite and 2 Win Guides.
Yeah, you guys did a pretty good job of the draft. I mean, I felt that I kind of started off with a green card and got cut, and I wasn't really sure. I was kind of surprised that I thought that you might be white, but I was kind of surprised that you took Cartouche over the Blinding Mummy. I'm not saying that was right or wrong, but just the pack I opened was so bad that I thought for sure that like Blinding Mummy was going to be the next card, and it actually worked out a little bit for me because you ended up taking a white card, but I ended up kind of wavering until I got the Neheb, which was kind of, you know, it's not insane, but it was kind of a gift when I wasn't sure where to go, and then obviously opening up Glorybringer is the nut, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like, the Cartouche versus Binding Mummy pick is, like, pretty close. And, like, I just, like, first picked and second picked white Cartouches, and was really just looking to draft exactly what I ended up with. As it turned out, Binding Mummy also would have been insane in my deck, but I think that I have like a very above average number of zombies for this archetype. Like, I don't think that it's reasonable to expect to get this many.
Yeah, and I think it worked out, especially because the Mummy is not, you know, is fine in any deck in white deck, but there are white decks where it's insane, and then it like kind of drops off pretty quickly. And I even thought about first picking it over Synchronized Strike, but I figured that's the kind of card that I don't mind passing, because if I end up moving into white, like the Binding Mummy doesn't end up very good in whoever's deck it is, and it's not like something you want to force either, like, because, you know, like you took the Cartouche over it, you didn't even want to try to go into zombies that early in the draft, which I think is pretty smart.
Yeah, I know that, I mean, Justin's been talking about how, like, in this league, whenever there's been like one zombie drafter in the draft, they've just crushed it. Personally, I've gotten burned by like going into zombies too early. My first draft at the PT, I first picked Lord of the Accursed and just like never saw any other zombies. My deck was a train wreck. So I've kind of been scared off from moving in on zombies until it's pretty clear that it's open. And I've generally had more success with like just like the cheap cartouche aggro decks, so I rode that way.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you. I actually also ended up drafting white-black twice at the Pro Tour, which was kind of just a circumstance of my seat, but it's definitely a lot tougher to draft it in a team draft when people know they're passing you zombie cards, and they're also, you know, there's only 6 drafters, so there's less packs open, which is pretty detrimental to the zombie strategy. Though we have seen some pretty insane zombie decks. I think that you're supposed to just kind of stay back and settle into it if it comes, but not try to force it at all.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it for sure.
And last week it was kind of interesting because I thought that I might be the only white-black drafter at the table, and I took a lot of the zombie synergy cards, and then Yelwer just ended up with a lot of removal. And in that scenario, his deck ends up better because I have like kind of a half-built zombie synergy deck, and he just has white-black cards with lots of removal. Obviously, you'd rather be in white-black cards with lots of removal than almost a zombie deck and basically no spells, so you can get really punished with that early zombie pick. So anyway, off of zombies, we're gonna be seeing Siggy playing green-black against Matt Severa, and currently I think that it's hard for me to really know exactly how the matchup's going to go. I feel like if Matt wins the die roll and has a solid opener, it's going to be really tough for Siggy to compete, because Siggy does have some reasonable stabilized creatures, but not a lot of his cards are that great at blocking. You know, he does have like Hooded Brawlers, Bitterblade Warriors, Baleful Ammonits, and Naga Vitalists. Like, he can get on the board early, but if Matt just has a bunch of bodies on the board, like, Siggy can't really compete with a big swing and an catcher's name, or even just a top crop elite, you know, exerted makes his Zuberas and his random, you know, 2/2s and 2/1s into formidable threats. Like, they're going to trade up pretty well, and that's going to be
looking
tough.
over Matt's deck more closely, because our configuration when we were building was kind of weird, and I didn't really get to see Matt's deck very clearly. But right now, like, his early creatures are kind of weird. Like, he doesn't have, like, you know, the like 2 tough attackers. He just has like Bloodlust Insiders.
Yeah, I'm having a bit trouble hearing, but yeah, I see that he does have some low toughness creatures. He's got like Sacred Cat, and he actually ended up playing 2 Those Who Serve, which looked kind of bad in his deck, but actually in the match against me, they were quite good because my creatures couldn't really block them. And when you have 2 Nick Catcher's names in your deck, like, they're almost impossible to block. You can't really double block them profitably, but at the same time, you know, doesn't have that much. If we see, how many 2-drops does he have? He just has the Vizier and 2 Nimble Blade Chimeras, which are not
that's what I'm saying
ideal.
is like kind of unusual about his deck is that like he's leaning more on like these 1-mana utility guys and high toughness creatures just to be like dedicated to building a board, which actually like helps him a lot against that.
I guess we kind of lost Sam again. I don't want to try to finish his point again because I'm not quite sure where he's going, but he does have an atypical red-white deck. Like the 1/3 prowess and the 2/4 Those Who Serve are not cards that, you know, you actually are usually happy with in a red-white deck. In a team draft where you're just trying to get enough playables could be good, but I think he did a good job of building his deck so that he can kind of miss some damage early to eventually, you know, use Throne or Catcher's Name or his cartouche of Zeal to kind of push through. And the 2 top crop elites also, like, attacking at any point in attacking 3/5 Those Who Serve or an attacking 2/4 Nimble Blade Kenra is just, I'm not going to say it's a nightmare because you don't take that much damage, but you can't really block because of the high toughness. And then if they do have an Catcher's Name, you're kind of in a catch-22 because you're forced to sort of, you really want to double block or triple block, but if they end up having the Catcher's Name or Distributor's Resolve, you know, you get really blown out. It's a really tough situation to be in. So like I said, we'll see if Matt can stick some early high toughness creatures and follow it up with a spell. I know when I played against him, he had pretty reasonable draws, and he very often had more creatures than me, which was a pretty scary situation to be in.
Yeah, I'm being told that I'm having some audio issues that I don't really understand and generally don't know anything about troubleshooting my stuff. So
I hear you now, yeah.
Yeah, I turned down the volume on my computer, which I think should fix it, oddly.
All right, looks like we're going down into the match. We'll see you back shortly. Okay, here we are. Looks like we have both players with 2 land hands, and Matt did win the die roll, so good start for Matt. He doesn't have his one of his 1 or 2 drops in his opener, which definitely is going to make this a bit tougher for him to get ahead.
I don't know. I'm not sure how important the 1 and 2 drops actually are in his deck, and his deck has this draw has kind of a good combo finish with the Regal Caracol and True Heart Twins, so. As long as he finds his lands...
Looks like he didn't draw the 3rd land, and then he cycled on main hands and missed again, which is definitely not good. I agree that the 1 trips aren't that important, but Siggy has a decent amount of beef, so if Matt is kind of behind on board, I think that Mike will be able to actually just potentially race him here. But it looks like Matt does find his 3rd land before it was just going to be game over, which is pretty nice.
Right, basically I think that... what I was saying before, or trying to say when my volume was having issues, is that Matt's deck is really more about just getting a bigger board faster than the opponent, rather than about getting early damage in. It's really hard for Matt's cheap creatures to actually get through something like a 2/3. He's trying to build a board presence so that he can take advantage of all of his stuff that pumps his whole team. And as long as he ends up hitting his land drops and his mana every turn. He has the kind of hand that doesn't really care if it gets how quickly it comes out, as long as he's never missing a turn deploying.
Yeah, he can be a bit slow as long as he starts deploying enough threats, and like you said, he's got the True Heart Twins, and a catcher's name, and the Top Crop Leap, and the Throne. Actually, he's got a lot of combo cards. Looks like Siggy opted to cycle the Shephet Monitor, which I think is a reasonable play, especially because he knows that Matt has 2 4-drops that have flying. Which, if he did end up making a land, he'd be able to also Stinging Shot. Also, Matt only has 1 compulsory rest for removal for Decimator Beetle, so Siggy, instead of playing the Kudu, he just kind of decided to ensure that he would have a Beetle on turn 5 no matter what. And looks like Matt did draw his 4th land here. He doesn't have an answer to the Decimator Beetle, and I think that Siggy might be able to have a big turn here, because he's got Stinging Shot and Cartouche.
Yeah, he's gonna tear him out apart this turn.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see if Regal Caracol can do something, but it's gonna be tough with the active Decimator Beetle, because not only is the Beetle gonna shrink Matt's creatures, but it's actually with the the 2 Kudus and now the Amit, it's gonna kind of continuously make Siggy's creatures bigger as well.
Yeah.
And Siggy actually has a decent number of cheap spells in his hands, so even though he's not really stuck on 5, he can cast 2 spells per turn for looks like at least 2 turns, if not 3 turns. Let's see what he leads off with, though. He knows that if Matt had his compulsory arrest, he likely would have cast it. So we're pretty likely going to see a Cartouche, just depending on what creature he's going to put it on. I think he's pretty likely to put it onto the Kudu, just to be, a little bit safer. He doesn't want to put all of his eggs in one basket, but both are good options here.
Yeah, well, he really needs to be able to attack with the Decimator Beetle this turn. So I don't think he wants to cartouche the beetle before combat. And I think he wants to cartouche before combat.
Well, if he fights he's got the stinging shot, so like I think he can attack with the beetle if he cartouches the beetle, right? Because it actually removes a counter off of itself, so it'll be a 5/6 with some amount of damage on it, and then he can stinging shot the 2/2. So he can put the cartouche either or.
Outside of the attack drop.
Which I think he's just tanking over where to put the cartouche because he just wants to he knows Matt's deck is this big combo deck. He really just wants to minimize Matt's board and start pressuring him. Looks like he's not going to cartouche though, so he's going to make a more conservative play. He's trying to get
the Baleful amp down so that he can because.
Yeah, that's good as well. I guess if he's playing the Baleful Ammon, it's like, even if Matt draws a compulsory arrest, he's still in a really bad shape, because the Ammon can then take the green cartouche, gaining life when it fights, and then attacking. So this is actually probably a better play than the line I came up with. Because we do have deck lists here in the Team Draft Super League, so he knows it's just one compulsory arrest. He knows that Matt, does have these kind of go-wide combo red-white cards, so he wants to just kind of get way out of range and build a big board at the same time.
Yeah. Wonder if we're at the point where Matt needs to just play the Kenra and try to set up a block within a catcher's name.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough situation, because if he does that, then he's kind of sinkholed on his 2 mana, because then the next turn he almost is forced to hold it up again. And he can't actually cast anything next turn. I guess he could do that, then next turn cast the Throne and hold it up. I don't love any of his options, and he does know Siggy's sitting on 6 spells because he's missed. This is turn 7, so Siggy has missed a few land drops here, as well as Matt, of course. He could try to play Mechanical first. Yeah, because then the Inner Catcher's Name can maybe do even more work if you have more creatures in play.
Right. Plus, he doesn't know about the stinging shot, so he can play Cat and then try to set up True Heart Twins plus
Exert. Yeah. I think that we're very likely to see the Cat here. I don't if he uses the Inner Catcher's Name defensively. I think he almost forfeits his ability to win this game. If that makes sense. He needs to have a huge attack within a catcher's name, maybe on defense as well, but if he uses it here, he's not going to get maximum value. I guess value isn't even the proper word. It's more just pump, more ability to take out more stuff. I really hate the word value, honestly. Okay. Siggy draws land number 6, which does give him the access to the Scaled Behemoth. I think he's likely just going to fight this Cat, though.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to lose to a big lifelink swing next turn, or not necessarily lose, but take a huge life swing.
Yeah. So you can eat the Cat with the Ammit and Decimator Beetle down the 2/1.
Mm-hmm. And then Matt can't even block, because Matt will only have a 2/4. And 2 1/1s left.
Right.
So he could attack with the Ammit too. He might lose it, but at this point he's pushing through so much damage that.
You think he wants to trade it with a 1/1?
Oh, it's got. I forgot the fight, the 3 damage on it. That's definitely a bad attack. You're right there. So we're gonna see the Beetle eating the Unwavering Initiate. Then Mike has the option of playing a Bitterblade or another Kudu. Bitterblades aren't great on this board, but aren't bad either. I think we're going to see a Kudu. Yeah, looks like he plays the Kudu, and now next turn, Matt's already at 12, and Siggy has now just a ton of power on board. Okay, looks like Matt drew a Fanbear, which I suppose is one of his better draws, but even here, I think it's just too little too late. Mike's attack next turn is just going to be devastating, because he can make those who serve into a 1/3 and likely just swing with pretty much as many creatures as he wants. With follow-up, he's got 3 spells in his hand too that are all solid.
Yeah, Matt's stumble on turn 3 was really backbreaking.
Yeah, but looks like he is going to hold up Inaketcher's name, so that might prompt Siggy to play it a little bit slowly here. Which I like to play by Matt. You know, he's got to take his window to potentially blow his opponent out. You know, he still has got a tiny sliver of hope, maybe, if Siggy makes a bad attack into it in a catcher's name.
Yeah.
And at least if Siggy does play conservatively, for the time being, you know, Matt can hold up the Inaketcher's name with also using the fan bearer every turn. Buy him some time. Maybe he can draw compulsory arrest to deal with the beetle. Yeah, so if an Inaketcher's name resolved, that does make those who serve into a 4/5, which actually isn't even that threatening. Like, it does block both the Kudus, but only trades with everything else. It makes the Severa, or not the Severa, the Kenera. I always forget that creature's name, so I apologize.
Kenra, yeah.
The Kenra. It's going to become a 3/5. So Siggy's just thinking, how big are his opponent's creatures are going to be? Does he have an attack? Can he just slam Scaled Behemoth this turn and play a little slowly? Which is kind of weird into a fan bear, but at the same time, you know, he's got gas in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, Scaled Behemoth doesn't care about fan bear. He just has so many different big bodies.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I'm honestly not sure what Siggy's going to do. If he ends up attacking with the two fat creatures, he can force an Inaketcher's name and still trade for the bigger creatures of Matt. But he can also just play the Scaled Behemoth post-combat and kind of start chunking with that. Luckily, he's at 25 and still has a lifelink creature in play. So he's in a situation where Matt's ability to combo kill him is I keep saying combo kill, but more like, you know, pump spells and whatnot
right.
to get in a big attack is not going to be that effective when Mike is going to be going to 30 this turn.
Yeah. No, it's going to take more than one big swing to win this game, which,
yeah,
you know, that's not super well positioned to have.
Siggy's thinking, just in general, not necessarily on this board, but if you're playing against a go wide deck, even if he's trading up, if his opponent's forced to use one of the Inaketcher's names, I think that's a win for him because he still can simplify the board. Like, whenever you're playing against a swarm deck, simplifying your opponent's board is generally pretty good because, you know,
especially when you have the Scaled Behemoth here that can like, you know, just churn through. Like, he has so much life, he can just like he has these super high impact cards, but it's okay to lose them.
Yes, yeah, because Matt's deck, it's not really designed to win against an opponent that has 2 large creatures and 25 life, you know? So if he just trades resources here, which it looks like he's going to do, he's going to end up trading Decimator Beetle for a cat and in a catcher's name, and I think of those. Oh, he can't kill those who serve. So he's going to have to kill. Could he, I guess he's going with block with 2 cats. He could block with those who serve.
Trying to play around a trick here.
Yeah, he could block with just those who serve and the 3/5. That's why I thought that Siggy might attack with the Baleful Amit as well. But it looks like Matt's still playing a bit conservative. I guess he doesn't know how strong Siggy's hand is. He thinks that if Siggy does have a shed weakness in his deck, so you know he doesn't want to just lose to that card. So you know, assuming that Siggy has that and not that much other action, it's a pretty tight block. But it end up not going to work for him, I don't think, because we don't have a shed weakness and Siggy actually has just a bunch of creatures.
Yeah. That's what we needed.
Sacred Cat. It does it does block the Scaled Behemoth for 2 turns, but don't think it really matters. He's likely going to have to just play the cat. Oh, he's going to play the True Heart Twins. I suppose it does just trade with Baleful Amit, and he can actually put all of his creatures, like all of his non-Fanbearer creatures in front of the Scaled Behemoth, which does technically trade with it.
Sure.
He'll lose 2 guys, and Siggy's going to offer up that trade if Matt wants it, but Matt's deck can't really operate with so few creatures. We'll see what he does to give him the best chance to win.
It's really hard to imagine Matt winning after Siggy plays 3 more creatures this turn.
Yeah, it was already like Siggy might not even need anything. I guess maybe he needed like 1 or 2 more spells to win the game eventually, because Matt's going to untap with Fanbearer, but I think looks like Matt's going to block the True Heart Twins. He's still playing around a Shed Weakness, which is fair. He thinks that Siggy might have done something this game to influence his decision. He can't afford to block the Scale Behemoth. The problem is, I think it just gets worse for him. Like, I don't think there's another situation where he's going to be able to deal with the Scale Behemoth if it's not now, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't have enough creatures. He doesn't have a pump spell. Yeah, it looks like he's going to reevaluate here his blocks. Because it's not, if Siggy has nothing, like Scale Behemoth for Those Who Serve, or for True Heart Twins and Nimble, like, obviously it's not a great trade, like, but considering he can't ever deal with the Scale Behemoth, I think it's probably what he has to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those spots where it's like, it's probably best, but it's so hard to see a path to victory regardless of what you do.
He really is not going to be able to win this game, like, pretty much no matter what. So looks like he's going to go kill the Amit, which, you know, if he leaves the Lifelinker in play, it's like bad for him as well. So I do think that this block is pretty strong, and he's not trading down resources for the first time this game. You know, he's like trading 1 for 1. He's trading his True Heart Twins for like an Amit with a cartouche on it as well. So maybe getting a tiny bit of card quantity back. But Siggy just deploys three creatures, and that's going to wrap it up for this game, I think.
Oh yeah, there's definitely no recovering from here.
Yeah, that stumble. If he had hit his 3rd land drop, the game would have been so much different. Well, I mean, it's very easy to say that in any game where somebody misses, but he had like he had a bunch of creatures, and he had like 4 pump spells or kind of like tokeny effects that would have, you know, come and given him a pretty big attack at some point.
Well, and I mean, that's also just like particularly the way that the game goes against Decimator Beetle when you don't have removal. Where, like, if you're behind enough that you fall under it, like, there's no coming back. But if you have enough of a board that you can just trade with it on its first attack, it's not necessarily that devastating. Yeah,
we've seen the Decimator Beetle, at least in the drafts that I've seen. I think the card is pretty good, and I probably drafted it a little bit too highly. But we see it go pretty late in TDSL. Though a lot of the times I feel like it's been opened in, like, pack 3, you know, and it's just hard to hate draft a card, especially when most of the time you might know that somebody's not playing green-black next to you.
Yeah.
If you just have creatures in play, or if you're a very fast deck, you know, it only comes in as a 3/4 or a 4/5 that shrinks something else. So its immediate board impact is kind of small. Anyway, we see everything getting into the red zone here. He did draw Supernatural Stamina, so makes it pretty easy to just fire with everything, especially being at 30 life. Force Matt to start blocking. Continue his path of kind of chip. He's not really been trying to decimate Matt's board, but he's kind of keeping it under control, so to speak. You know, Matt has kind of had 3, 4, or 5 creatures the entire game, and Siggy has made attacks to keep it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about how when you were playing against Matt, you didn't know like what tricks to play around and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that Matt really gets punished for public deck lists here, where Siggy knows that his like game plan is all about building up a board in a way that it isn't for a lot of red-white decks. Yeah, and so it's just like makes it like really kind of uniquely easier for Mike to play around this than it would be in a lot of other situations.
Yeah, so it also will be. That said, it might be interesting to see how Matt sideboards. You know, he has a couple of flings. He has an Onward to Victory, which actually is in his main deck, which I think is the right call for his deck. But he might, you know, if he boards in the flings, he could also maybe board in Desert Ceradon. You know, instead of trying to go wide, he can try to just go kind of to the face or kind of over with flyers or whatever.
Yeah, he definitely has options to kind of juke his game plan some. And it does look like he's maybe going in that direction. We see him moving Throne of the God Pharaoh and Sacred Cat out, bringing in some flings.
I definitely like the Manticore here. Just something big that can trade with Siggy's creatures and also just, go to the face. And with the flings, of course, is even better. 3 damage, and then interesting to see. He's probably gonna put the Ceradon in. It's almost a free roll if you're gonna put 2 flings in your deck to put in the Ceradon. See what he cuts. Mike doesn't actually have that much removal. Like, he does have, Stinging Shot and Final Reward, so he's probably gonna leave the Cartouche in. Looks like he's gonna cut out the Inacatcher's names entirely, or no? We'll see what he does. He's still thinking this through a little bit.
Yeah, I hope that Matt notices that Siggy's sideboard has the fog that he's actually brought in, because shifting from Inacatcher's names into flings instead makes him way less exposed to the fog. Yeah.
Actually, when we were deck building, I told Siggy, I was like, yeah, maybe we should even consider main decking Hazepollen, because we knew that you guys had the white and the blue decks. We knew you had the Ave Initiate decks. I actually have been kind of surprised by the Hazepollen. I have not played with or against it that much, but I've had so many situations where in my head I'm like, oh crap, I'm dead if he's got Hazepollen, but I need to make this attack. So it could be interesting, but I guess because there's deck lists, it's probably not that great. Like, obviously in round 1, it could be potentially good, but other than that, it's pretty awkward. And Siggy is kind of a mid-range beatdown deck, so he couldn't really afford it. But it is definitely an interesting card, I think. I feel like there's always 1 or 2 of those cards in every draft format that people don't play often, but I kind of realize are good, because in my games I'm kind of constantly thinking about the potential, when you're really ahead. Might have Hazepollen. I remember one that really, really always upset me was, I know it was a long time ago, but Lost in the Mist, because it's a very bad card, but I ran into so many situations where I thought I'd be dead to it, which is like a 5-mana counterspell that also bounces something, kind of like a Cryptic Command. All right, looks like...
so it looks like Matt actually ended up going back to his original plan. He ended up cutting the flings and the Manticore, which...
Yeah, I actually think that it's okay when he's on the play, because I feel like if he's trying to fight through a bunch of green creatures, like, the flings don't help your creatures attack, really. And if Siggy's just going to play a bunch of green blockers, like, the flings end up...
It's possible that Siggy's early game is... Yeah, I guess what's going on is that, like, Matt's early game isn't great at pushing damage, and Siggy's early game is really good at blocking. So he just feels like he's not going to be able to get him low, and he just has to try to do the, like, big attack plan.
And Mike doesn't have that much removal. If Mike had a few more removal spells, I think Fling would be a little bit better, but as it stands, Mike has, like, Final Reward, Green Cartouche, and that's, I believe, it. Let me look at his deck list really quick. Oh, he's got the Stinging Shot, so I guess if you count that is a 3rd removal spell, but looks like we both have Siggy mode to 6, doesn't have a black source, but does have the ability to cycle his Wasteland Scorpion.
Both players are going to need some land.
Yeah, Matt once again needs land number 3. This time doesn't have a Cycler though, so we'll see how that plays out. But he does have Crasher, which is a card that is obviously like bonkers in his deck, and he hasn't really drawn it so far. At least he didn't draw it against me. So, and Siggy's only drawn. Siggy's drawn 2 forests.
Siggy needs land, but really Siggy needs swamp land. Like forest is really bad.
There is land number 3, and it's really nice when your opponent plays a 2-drop that can't actually block the Crasher, because you get that free 3 points of damage without exerting it. Siggy missing on swamp. Looks like he's going to cycle, and he finds another black card. So.
He really needs to draw a swamp next turn to be able to cast this beetle.
If Matt can slam this Emberhorn Minotaur this next turn, the game might just be over. I guess Siggy still has a chance to maybe draw a swamp and use his Final Reward, but Matt not only is ahead, Siggy doesn't have a black land, and his hand's pretty good. Eventually Matt's going to draw a 3rd land, and that Caracal plus double in the catcher's name is kind of unlocked.
Yeah, that missing a swamp there, I think, was... Yeah. I don't know how Siggy can come back at this point.
And that's actually just game, I think. I don't think it really matters what Siggy draws at this point.
Yeah. He's too far behind for sure.
Yeah, even with the Bosu serve. Now with the top crop, Matt could even maybe not put a top crop if he's thinking about Stinging Shot because he's just so far ahead. And those who serve is a zombie, so it does get additional pumps from the Innicatcher's name. We'll see what he does. He's going to exert playing around, I guess, Shed Weakness or potentially like Spidery Grasp out of Siggy's sideboard. I think it's a solid play. He's pretty far ahead. He definitely doesn't want to just lose I forget that guy's name. Oh, I have deck lists. The 3/2 haste. My apologies. The on crop crasher, and yeah, Siggy scoops him up. We're on to game 3. And that's what kind of Matt's deck can do. Even if Siggy was on the ball with his land drop set game, you know, Matt still had a really solid draw, like eventually getting that Caracal into play.
Yeah.
But anyway, that game is done for. Let's see how these players sideboard. I think that Matt's deck is just kind of too reliant on the Innicatcher's name. I don't think that we'll see flings, at least not in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree. Siggy just has like too much early defense. He's just never going to be low enough on life.
And as we saw in game, on the draw, the Innicatcher's names in his deck, because he's got the high toughness creatures, he can actually use them to block, you know, and Siggy does have the ability to curve out, even though he is kind of like, he's got the 2 Naga Vitalists, but he isn't really ramping, right? He's kind of just a mid-range green-black deck. Like, those Innicatcher's names are going to be solid to block with. Like,
yeah, I don't think Matt can change his game plan, but I do think that on the draw, I would cut Throne of the God Pharaoh for the Manticore.
Yeah, he can also potentially board in. Yeah, I guess the Manticore would be the one. He's going to take out the Sacred Cat for a fling, which he's going to take out the Throne, like you said. Nice. Yeah, the Manticore seems really good against Siggy. Like, Siggy's got 2 Kudus, which are 3/4s. He's got the Bitter Blades that just don't block it very well. Typically, a card like Manticore wouldn't be that big of a deal against a green-black deck, but Mike just doesn't have that many cards that block it too profitably. At least that I can see. He's got the 2/2 Death Touch. And that's really about it. The Prowling, the cat
Serpapard, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of knew what it was called, but wasn't really that confident, so I kind of passed on saying the second word, so thanks for finishing that for me. This is more sideboarding than I've normally seen. Normally players, both Matt and Mike have a lot of playables, like a lot more than I've seen in most of the decks. At least the decks that I have drafted have been like 23 with 1 or 2 potentially playable cards, but
yeah, I mean, especially in team drafting and everything.
Yep, and Matt has both the flings now. He pulled down 1 fling and now he's pulled another fling. This is so ridiculous. He puts it back. Okay, he swapped it back. So he's currently with 20 seconds left. There's 2 Innicatcher's names and 1 fling in his deck.
Yeah, and both players are just moving everything around through the whole sideboarding time. This is
yeah, because from Siggy's standpoint, it's pretty interesting because he doesn't know how Matt's going to sideboard, so he doesn't want to go he doesn't want to sideboard in too much of a way that would make him potentially get blown out by fling, but at the same time, he needs to kind of respect it a little bit. He can't just ignore it, right? Okay.
Yeah, and since he didn't really get to play a game last game, he doesn't really know. He doesn't even know what plan Matt was on for game 2.
It does look like, I don't know when that got updated, but it looks like your team has won the match between Justin Cohen and Alex Hain. That might have happened a while ago. I don't know. It says 2 now, so.
Yeah, no, I see that.
We see that Matt has mulliganed to 6 cards.
Found his mountain.
Mountain has got a solid draw. Siggy has a reasonable draw, too. He's a bit creature light. So we'll see how this plays out. And Matt has land number 4, so we're probably going to have a pretty interesting game here.
Yeah, both players are at least going to be able to play Magic. And
yeah,
here, Siggy has to play the Bale Flamet, and those who serve is going to line up really well against it since it has to put the counter on itself.
He did opt not to cycle the Stinging Shot, which I think is reasonable. He definitely doesn't want Matt to have a free top crop guy, and he can just wait, kind of. He can always just Stinging Shot, after turn 4 or 5, when Matt doesn't have it, he can cycle later. He's kind of in a weird spot, though, because he doesn't have any creatures.
Right, but I mean, he had lands and he had plays, and he's like with this hand, he's really in danger of flooding out because he already has 6 lands and he has the Haze of Pawn that's like, you know, not really a card in a lot of. If he cycles the Stinging Shot and just finds another land,
looks like he's gonna cycle the Haze. Draws a Great Maw, so that'll actually make the Baleful Ammon into a 4/3. Just pretty great run of draws there for Siggy. Matt does have the Fling, but if Matt is tapped out, wow, it's really unfortunate Matt doesn't have a second Mountain. If he had a second Mountain, then I would think that Matt is in pretty good shape here. But actually, as it's with only the one Mountain, like he can't really. I guess he can just play a Sparring Mummy after exerting potentially. We'll see what Siggy does though, because Siggy also has a similar problem, right? He only has 1 Forest. He could potentially go double spell with Defiant Greatmaw and Cartouche Strike next turn, but he actually doesn't have double forest. Yeah, what I'm saying is he could reward this turn is what I should have said. Both players kind of.
I think that it's best for him if he gets the. Oh wow, he's just passing with Final Reward up.
He's just passing the Final Reward up. So we'll see. We're probably just going to see an Exert here. And then potentially a Sparring Mummy into a Bloodlust Insider. So right now I can't hear you, Sam, by the way. But we'll see if Siggy takes this or not. I think he'll likely Final Reward it.
Right, and then we get to fling the Ammit.
And he can fling it at the Ammit. He doesn't. I guess he can only do one thing that turn if he did that. So he's going to opt to instead play the Mummy and the Insider. But yeah, both players weirdly mana screwed, even though having 5 and 6 lands. Big turn for Siggy. If he can draw a forest here, I think we can see a pretty big turn. Oh no, actually he can't get an attack in with the Ammit because it'll only be 4/3. And if he fights with it, it'll have enough damage on it. No matter what, Matt will be able to block.
Right, you can make it a 5/4.
You can make it a. Yep, he can attack with it, but he is at 20 life. It's not that relevant right now. And we'll see if Siggy probably is going to opt to Cartouche. I mean, it's pretty good if he's assuming that Matt has Fling in his deck. Probably going to put it on the Lifelinker and just have this threat for the rest of the game, killing the Sparring Mummy. So this is looking pretty good for Mike. The Crasher is good, but it's kind of mitigated once again by the lifelink for Mike is just so makes Matt's deck operate completely differently than it wants to.
Now Siggy's gonna get paid for holding.
Yeah, if he doesn't draw a spell this turn though, he's probably just gonna cycle the Singing Shot. Though he could wait. The problem is if he ends up drawing into, well, he doesn't have that much removal. Now that he's cast the Final Reward and the Cartouche Strength, that's actually all of his removal. So, like, maybe he won't cycle it, because at this point in the game, he can really only draw into more creatures. He does have Supernatural Stamina, I suppose, which would be a reasonable draw.
Get that Matt wanted to... Happened to be the...
More static. I'm being bombarded with static. Okay, we'll see what Siggy does. Looks like he's just gonna pass, which is pretty good, because I think that one of the ways that Matt can kind of get back into this game is one of his Top Crop elites, because if Siggy just kind of plays it slowly, you know, eventually he's gonna Stinging Shot an elite, and that's his like last removal spell. If the elite just can attack him for 2 every turn and eventually exert, it's not great for him. So, and cycling it isn't that great. Like, unless he draws like a Decimator Beetle or Supernatural Stamina, the rest of his draws are just like Bitterblade Warriors and stuff like that. So I suppose he does have 2 Ordinary Kudus, which if he drew that, he could put a counter on the Great Maw. Looks like he draws a Festering Mummy, which is fine. It represents a card that can eventually block the Crasher, or just kind of keep the Crasher from attacking forever. It looks like this game probably favors Mike at this point. It's hard for me to say. Now that Matt has one of his elites down, Matt still has like Regal Caracal as well as, you know, the ability to eventually draw a bunch of Iniketra's names. But Mike has some pretty big hits in his deck. Like, he does have, of course, he's got the life total. You know, he's got the life linker and the life total, but he's got like Stir the Sands, and even Ornery Kudu is a reasonable draw. Looks like he also has, of course, the Sheffet Monitors has Scale Behemoth, so he does have some beef in there. He is pretty flooded, which is unfortunate, but 16 land deck, you know, the game's going to last long enough where he's going to eventually draw spells. I don't think that Matt is going to be able to kill him before he ends up drawing a decent number of spells.
I agree. Like, Mike can't make a lot of progress here. So hard for him.
Looks like he's just going to offer in the Festering Mummy, which, you know, Matt just... I like to play from Matt because a lot of the times what happens is, like, Matt might decide to just take it, but then he ends up taking 3 damage from the Mummy before blocking it. You know, blocking it right away is just like, no, I'm not taking any free damage. Like, that's eventually going to happen. That's a fine trade for me at this point. Looks like there is a Kudu, so he's going to be able to... I believe he's going to make a 3/4, and then the Defiant Great Maw will be a 1/2. He could also put the counter on the Amit, but that's not really that great. Okay, he's tanking over what he should do here. If he puts the counter on the Great Maw, he ends up with a 1/2 Great Maw, which really converts it from being a relevant card to kind of irrelevant. So I think he's...
Next time you get Great Maw.
We'll see what he does here. Looks like he's got the trigger, and he's going to target itself, which is reasonable because now he doesn't make the Great Maw. The Baleful Amit is still kind of king of the board. The Defiant Great Maw is still reasonable, and now if he eventually does draw like another one of his other Kudu, it can kind of like take both counters off the Kudus because he can put the counter on the Great Maw at that point. Dread Wanderer doesn't really do much on this board. If he had it last turn, he could have just put a counter on it. So that's a tiny bit unfortunate sequencing, but Siggy will take any spell at this point. I think that if Siggy draws a reasonable mix of land and spells for the rest of the game, and now like we see Matt flooding out a little bit, it's going to be pretty hard for him to lose because he's eventually just going to draw one of his big creatures. Though I guess Matt does have a Fan Bear and a Compulsory Arrest and a Regal Caracal, so I shouldn't be saying that like Siggy's definitely not locked to win. I think I might have gotten ahead of myself a little bit there. There's a True Heart Twins. Reasonable. Definitely a pretty formidable card, especially because Mike still has to respect the ability of Matt to have combat tricks. But Mike now has kind of the infinite Dread Wanderer blocker, which does a really good job of kind of preventing Matt from trying anything tricky. But both players really flooded here. Not much happening, you know. Matt just really wants to draw. Now that he's drawn the True Heart Twins, he's got another Top Crop Elite, and he's got the Regal Caracal and the Iniketra's names. Everything else is pretty medium. Just Stir the Sand. So we did draw one of the big cards. I think out of like Sheffet Monitor, Scale Behemoth, like that's the worst one, but it's just pretty impactful. You know, he's going to make a bunch of 2/2s. Obviously, Matt has a bunch of 2/4s and is representing potentially having a few spells in his hand at this point, but it's just going to kind of pile on as soon as Mike draws another big creature. We're in a spot where if Siggy draws a big creature, you know, Matt's going to pretty much have to trade his best creature for it. Manticore is good. Definitely solid, but we're going to see a board stall for sure. I'm beginning to think that Siggy actually isn't in as good shape as I originally thought, you know, because Matt can just kind of prevent Siggy from attacking by having reasonable-sized creatures. And, I mean, eventually, it looks like it might go really long. Like, eventually he might draw both of his Inaketcher's names and his Fanbearer, which we know that Siggy, if Matt draws Fanbearer, Siggy literally can't kill it, and it's going to be really bad for him. I'll look at Mike's deck again. I guess he does have a Bone Picker. He's got Bone Picker, he's got Decimator Beetle, he has a Supernatural Stamina, 2 Naga Vitalists, not great. Yeah, actually, this might just go Matt's way. I don't see Siggy's like they both really don't have that many great draws left, I don't think. Because we're getting to the point where Matt has a big enough board where Scaled Behemoth isn't a great draw. Though I guess, he's got 3 Bitterblade Warriors. I'd forgotten about that. If he can just keep drawing, like, every time he draws a Bitterblade Warrior, he can just attack and exert it and like, trade up pretty much every time. Though there's an Unwavering Initiative to kind of foil that plan a little bit. Still can't hear Sam. It's just me and a bunch of, like fuzz, you know? Which could be better, but it's all right. It's all right. I'll enjoy my solo commentary bit here while I have it. Pretty tough because nothing really is going on this game, but I think that there's the Fanbearer. Okay, so that's a huge draw. Now that he has the Fanbearer, he can kind of control. He can kind of control a little bit of Siggy's game plan. Ooh, I just heard typing. That's good. So maybe Sam's gonna be back online soon. Tell me about all the dumb things that I've said so far, and more beef. Yeah, actually, the more this game plays out, it's not how it would play out in my head because Siggy didn't draw any of his big cards right away. As soon as I said I think Siggy's in great shape, but since then we have a True Heart Twins, a Manticore, the Fanbearer, and just no real profitable attacks for Mike, and his deck just doesn't have much left. It's really out of gas. He does have a Bone Picker, which I suppose if he draws that, will sort of either lock down the Fanbearer or force a Fling. So I think that, as I've said, I think at this point Matt's just going to eventually win this game. Because he's eventually going to draw a Top Crop Elites and a Regal Caracal. Which is unfortunate. Maybe if those threats are like on the bottom of Matt's deck, he can win. But the thing is, Siggy's actually forced to attack at some point because he's got 13 cards in deck versus 15. He drew a Kudu, so that's reasonable. You can make 2, 3, 4 Kudus. So yeah, I mean, Siggy's definitely not out of it. I could see if he starts drawing spells like creatures that can attack for a few turns in a row, he can maybe overpower Matt a little bit.
But I mean, I don't know how Matt's gonna be able to win, right?
Well, Matt just decks
he has
him, right?
What was that?
Matt's just gonna deck him. I'm pretty sure. As soon as Matt draws an Inaketcher's name, it's so hard for Mike to attack. It is pretty ridiculous. It's kind of a bold claim at 15 cards left in deck, but the game has not really advanced, and I just keep looking at Siggy's deck, and the only card that he can draw that does anything is Bone Picker and Bitterblade Warriors. So I guess he does have real draws left, but it's just I don't know. It's a pretty sloppy game. It's hard for me to maybe Siggy won't get decked, but I can't.
Well, I mean, he also has Decimator Beetle.
Yeah,
I
guess the Scale Behemoth plus the Shed. What he can do is he can play Scale Behemoth and actually just wait till he draws Supernatural Stamina. That way, eventually, he can attack with the Scale Behemoth, get a great trade in, and then just start firing in with everything. But like I said, I mean, if Siggy draws running threats here, he can maybe close the window, because Matt actually doesn't have an Inaketcher's name yet, which I think is good. As soon as he draws it, the window is going to close, I think, on Siggy's chances. So right now, let's see. Matt has 8 creatures. Siggy has a lot more, right? He's got 8, 9, 10, 11.
And there's the
Decimator
beetle.
Yeah. So yeah, no, mate, he's gonna prove me wrong potentially. I mean, he drew like Ornery Kudu into Scaled Behemoth into Beetle, like right after drawing Stir.
Yeah, this deck just has, so much more total mana worth of like bigness.
Yes. And I like that. Mana, like the power and toughness of his creatures is just, once he gets everything in play, it's going to be much more than what Matt has. Yeah. Assuming Matt doesn't have an catcher's name, which I guess he just doesn't have it yet. So it's like, I
guess the question is how much Siggy is going to respect like the possibility that Matt has it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you came back, because I was on the like Siggy's definitely going to win this game. He's eventually going to draw real threats, and Matt doesn't have much. And then I was on the like Matt's going to win, but now I'm kind of back on the Siggy's going to win though. It's he did just kind of the first shift in the game happened in a long time when he drew those 3 big fatties in a row.
Yeah, like I think Siggy's way ahead, but it's just really tricky for him to figure out like what you're supposed to attack with here when Matt like you have every reason to think Matt's holding in a catcher's name.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And it's kind of a weird situation because he knows that he's going to deck first. So he's sort of forced to maybe at some point he's going to have to make the first move. And the question is like, do you just attack now? Or because every turn, like Matt has the potential to draw another in a catcher's name. The first, he doesn't know if it's the first or the second, but if he starts attacking it and kind of making Matt's board smaller before the in a catcher's name happens, that's really good for Mike, I think, because then like the in a catcher's name might not even do anything. And we know that Siggy still has 2 Bitterblade Warriors and a Bone Picker in his deck. The rest of his deck is like 2 Naga Vitalists, a Supernatural Stamina, Doom Dissenter, a Sheffet Monitor, and lands. So he's got like, I guess he still has a lot of real draws at this point, and Matt just never found the in a catcher's name in time.
And as much as we were talking about how it was like hard for Siggy to play around the possible in a catcher's name when making his attacks, now Matt has to figure out how to play around the possible Shed Weakness or Supernatural Stamina when choosing his blocks.
Mm-hmm. Because they've been building up for a long time, and it's kind of weird because like he knows that Mike was flooded early, though Mike is only showing 12 lands, so he knows out of the 11 cards in Siggy's deck and 3 cards in his hand, he knows that only 4 of them are lands, right? So he figures that Siggy probably has, just like on a very basic level, Siggy's very likely to have at least 2 spells, if not more.
Right. And you know that he's like obviously not sandbagging any creatures, so he has at most the creature he drew this turn. So you basically have to put him on a trick.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, he does have the fling. It just really doesn't do much, And Siggy's going to follow up with the Decimator Beetle. So yeah, no, I mean, you're totally right. I think that we'll see how Matt blocks. It's kind of too complicated to figure this out when both players are obviously thinking about like, okay, what if he's got stamina? What if he's got in a catcher's name? But like we said with Matt's deck before, like Matt just has lots of high toughness creatures, so he actually has the ability to kind of, throw a lot of creatures underneath something without the potential of getting blown out. Looks like we're gonna double block the Baleful Amit. Currently, a Shed Weakness would leave the Scaled Behemoth in play.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely misevaluated the board a little bit, but I was just trying to talk on the fly, and Siggy drew really well the last 3 turns.
Oh yeah.
The Shed Weakness. I can't remember exactly the order, but it was something like Kudu. It was something like Bitterblade Warrior into Kudu, into Behemoth, into Shed Behemoth or Shed Weakness and Decimator Beetle. 5 out of 5 draws, I think. Maybe 5 out of 6. I think that. I mean, obviously I see the hands, but don't see why Matt wouldn't put the 1/3 in front of the Behemoth as well.
Yeah,
and it does.
I've just been assuming he's going to.
Yeah. Like, obviously, if Siggy has nothing, he can only kill 1 creature, which is, But you gotta just assume, like we said before, we gotta assume that Mike does have something. Gonna see a fling here
to save the Kenra.
Oh, he's got a de jour's resolve, which
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I don't know where it came from. Maybe he's got Catcher's name in his hand. Wait, so he's got 13 cards in his deck, 4 in his graveyard. That's 17, 18, 19.
All right, well, I like 3 bonus spells.
Well, on the view, oh yeah, the viewer says he's got 4 cards in his hand, so he actually has 1 more card than we know about.
Oh wow, there's an catcher's name now. Oh, I see. All right. Well, that's all pretty weird.
Did he cycle? No, he cast the de jour's resolve because the True Heart Twins has the bubble on it.
So he had an catcher's name that he's saving.
Yeah, he figures that, you know, maybe Siggy doesn't think he has it. I don't think it was that good on the last attack, though.
Yeah.
Decimator Beetle is going to be locked down for life at this point. And I think we're still in the same... I think we're still in the situation where Mike needs to draw. Though, like I said, you know, most of his deck is threats, but if they're coming up soon, that'll be really nice because the Decimator Beetle needs to be locked down. So, like, every random, like, Bitterblade Warrior or Bone Picker that he draws is a pretty legitimate threat. And yeah, like, Siggy's just kind of trading a Hooded Dweller for Those Who Serve, which isn't ideal, I don't think. But those creatures are just so good with the Catcher's name in hand that it feels like trading feels bad, but also just lets your more attacks be a little bit more profitable. That Vizier Remedy is really nice because now the Decimator Beetle can't just pick off whatever, and Siggy has no way of removing it, like we already said. So I don't think that he doesn't need to lock down the Decimator Beetle. He might do it anyway, but it's a lot less of a threat at this point. Siggy's got 9 cards in his deck, and like I said, he's got 3 of them are lands. He's got a flyer, which is really nice. He's got Prowling Serpapard. He's got a Sheffet Monitor, and the Supernatural Stamina, which I think at this point, am I still live? Okay, thank you. I think that the fling kind of is going to eventually potentially fizzle our plans to Supernatural Stamina. Going to flash back the Unwavering Initiate. It's now a zombie. And yeah, I mean, it just looks like Siggy's going to deck. I don't know. I felt this feeling and then got talked off it, but by a few good draws, but like it just doesn't... I really don't see how he's going to win, so this is kind of interesting. I'm up here trying to commentate this marathon match where I think Siggy's just going to deck in the end, which is pretty funny because, you know, he's playing against a red-white deck. You figure the green-black deck is going to easily be able to win. Attack with the Bitterblade. Okay. He's just going to trade with the zombie. Smart block. He's not going to block with the Vizier. He doesn't want to unlock any beetle shenanigans. Like, for instance, Siggy could have sided in something like Spidery Grasp. So untap it. Siggy only has 2 lands left in his deck.
Hey, Steve, we're calling in reinforcements.
Hey, that's very, very welcome. It's been an interesting game so far.
You've been handling it quite well.
I've predicted the deck from maybe when they had about 20 cards in their deck, so we'll see if it actually ends up playing out that way.
It was definitely live. I think it's definitely true. Mike is on the hook to attack and push through damage here, or he just is going to get decked. Question is whether he can pull it off.
Yeah,
and then, we did have a hand cam bug earlier. I know you got confused when the Jeru's Resolve came out of nowhere. Matt's hand cam had not been updating for a couple of turns. That's what happened there.
Yeah, it felt a little weird because it felt like at that point he had to have drawn one, but he still has 1 more in his deck, too, to draw, so... looks like Siggy finally does draw the Supernatural Stamina, which at least is a lot worse when he doesn't have the Skilled Behemoth, but I don't think that he could really have done anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Matt, you just settle in for the deck, right?
Yeah, I think Matt has been. I mean, Matt has not attacked. It's turn 27, if you look.
Right.
I don't think Matt has attacked since. Trying to think when he's attacked. I don't think he's attacked. He's played the Crasher on turn 3, maybe, or no, he didn't. I think that Matt just hasn't attacked at all this game.
He was at 25 at one point, so he got 2 damage in somewhere.
Yeah, he took.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
I think it's right though. I mean, with this sort of good at blocking black-green deck.
Yeah. He's got deck lists. He knows he's got In a Catcher's Name, which is something that Mike can't really do much about. They both kind of flooded out when it was, Mike needed to kind of push the advantage of being like on even footing with a red-white aggro deck and was not able to do so. So
yeah, I know we talked sometimes about how decks get a little clunky sometimes in a team draft, and I mean stuff like this can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was smart to recognize that he may get paid off here with a win.
Yeah,
and game too, right? I mean, the difference between 3-1 and 2-2 feels like more than one win. Oh, the Regal Caracal is here.
Yeah, I think that's just going to be the deck. I don't think Siggy can do anything with 5 cards left in his deck. He does have the Bone Picker, but it just, at this point, the Fan Bearer can tap it. The Vizier keep care of the Decimator Beetle, and don't think Siggy's going to scoop or anything, but we're going to see a deck for sure. Almost 100% now. And Matt also has 5 cards in his hand, so you can see it.
Have you seen somebody get decked in this format? This does not seem like a format where people deck each other very often.
I got decked at the Pro Tour, actually.
Okay.
With a white-black deck, and my opponent just kind of had like the 2/3 Javelineer, like red-blue control deck, and he actually cast 2 compelling arguments on me. Yeah, when I was kind of turning the corner. So obviously that's a little bit different, but there is kind of a situation where there are creatures that come back. There's a lot of well, I guess it's a pretty aggressive format, but almost sometimes aggressive decks are built to be so low to the ground that eventually they're not really good in the late game situation. And if both decks are built like that, you get into this weird late game scenario where neither deck can really be the first one to attack, and then somebody ends up decking. So I guess to answer your question, it's pretty rare, but it happens in pretty much every limited format, I think.
Bone Picker has finally arrived, but I mean there aren't even enough turns for Bone Picker to win this game.
Yeah, no, that was the one card that I was saying. I've been mentioning it so many times that if Siggy had drawn that, somewhere between 6 and 20 cards ago, he probably would be able to win because, Matt, I guess, does have a compulsory arrest and a flyer of his own, but it would have been really, really good.
And a Fan Bearer.
Yeah. And Matt, we do know that Matt does have Cartouche of Red and an In a Catcher's Name, at least one in his hand, and a Fling still in his hand, so.
No Catcher's Attendant is here now.
Yeah, and he actually...
Catcher's Attendant could actually win this game for Matt if he needed it to, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. I mean, the Bone Picker blocks, but I suppose he can use the Fan Bear to deal with it. And then even if it did trade with the Bone Picker, he just gets involved.
Right,
So anyway, thanks for sitting tight with us. This is kind of a long game with we kind of knew it was going to happen a while ago, or at least I thought I did, and it ended up happening, so... It's
crazy game.
Not every day you see the deck.
Let's talk about the overall matchups. In terms of the way the draft went, we've seen most of the decks on camera at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you feel like you're supposed to be down 3-1? Do you feel like you got outdrafted, or you just think, we're this far from a 2-2 tie?
I think their decks are actually pretty good. They did a really good job of drafting these pretty go underneath you type decks.
Yeah,
and they are really utilizing generally in team draft it's hard to get enough playables.
Yeah,
but they're really utilizing the cards they got to table, which we are doing kind of. But for example, Matt has 2 In a Catcher's Names, which I didn't look at the draft viewer, but I'm sure he tabled both of those, and those are the best cards in his deck. And for example, Sam has 3 Slither Blades.
And
which
every one of them, we watched Sam draft, and he would hover the Sliver Blade, knowing that it was going to come back. and it would come back, and
I passed 2 Slither Blades pretty late, and I was taking cards from my deck over them, and it was pretty much never right, because I could take it potentially from my teammate. Even I could be taking it from my teammate across the table, so I'm always just going to take the card that's good for my deck. And also the Aven Initiates went pretty late. Sam got the 2. I actually only saw 1, but there were 3 of the Aven Win Guide in the draft, and he ended up with 2 of them. So I think that just pick for pick wise, they got a little bit more bang from their buck. Yeah, I think that, like, you know, we might have decks that look more powerful, but they're just doing a pretty good job of going underneath. Or I guess Justin has kind of got a bunch of flyers, so, and bombs.
Yeah. Both Matt and Sam seem super aggressive, like more aggressive than the conventional wisdom would tell you can be in a team draft, right? I mean, you're not supposed to be able to get the 3 Slither Blades. I mean, it's only 6 packs, and decks tend to be clunkier while people sort of hate draft each other, but I don't know.
Yeah, and here we are. Matt's decking his opponent because he just, you know, the decks. It's not like a lot of the times if you get decked, it's just a matter of your deck not being very good. I think Siggy's deck is actually pretty good. It's just unfortunate that he doesn't have that much removal, and he's like 1 or 2 like greater sandworm, like, or like some fatty short of like being a good green-black stabilized deck. So
yeah, it's solid, but you need the 1 or 2 just heavy hitters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess Scaled Behemoth is the closest he's got, right?
Yeah, he has the Scaled Behemoth. It's definitely really good. As I said a while ago, like he could have maybe waited to draw a Supernatural Stamina when he had it, which would have been really, really sick, but he just didn't. Like, it could have been on the bottom of his deck, so he had to attack. But anyway, there is a game still going on. Very, very barely. Siggy's going to draw his last card and probably lose.
Yeah, the life totals may look like they're 23-17. It's actually 2-1. That's the important part.
He's got all of his lands. I don't know what his last card is. I think it's a Naga Vitalist. If I've been paying attention. And yeah, I mean, Matt, lots of resilient threats, and like me and Sam were talking in the sideboarded games, like he was signing out the Innocatcher's Name, and you know, we were mentioning, you know, the Innocatcher's Name is actually just great for blocking, which if you're playing against a green deck that's going a little bit bigger than you, and you know, it just makes it so hard for them to go through. Let's see what Siggy's last card though is here. Turn 32, turn 33. Oh, it's just a land. Okay, so he actually has 17 lands in his deck. Didn't know that.
There you go. Siggy scoops them up. There's no way he's getting through for lethal. Yep. He has been decked. And that means them boys are in a hole.
Yeah, we're down 3-1.
You're down 3-1. Still plenty of Magic left to be played. You still got 1 loss to give. But, you know, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, we'll see. I think their decks are pretty solid. Unfortunate that Alex is down 2 matches, because I thought that his deck was pretty good, and he does have like the 2 Magma Sprays, a stinging shot, and a Splendid Agony. So I thought that his deck would be pretty good at like kind of preventing these aggro decks from kind of getting ahead. But
Kane is 0-2, Siggy's 0-1, and you have the win. Basically where we're at.
I mean, yeah, technically the score is we as a team have 1 win, and they have 3. So
it's a good answer.
It was more of that. I thought, you know, Haynes' deck seemed to line up pretty well against theirs, but I guess he has 3 colors and they are all pretty fast. So that could potentially. I have not seen any of his games because I was playing, so that could have potentially been bad for him.
All right, well, them boys are in a hole. Team Madison could hypothetically clinch next round if they win both of them, but stay tuned, guys. We still have potentially a lot of Magic left. We'll be right back.
Looking for a challenge? Magic